Hello everyone and welcome to Muddy Beards 4x4. I am Robbie and today we are working on my 2001 Jeep Grand Cherokee WJ that I recently installed a 4-inch Rock Link full suspension lift kit from IRO off-road on. And I've been able to take this thing out on a few adventures, did some mile wheeling up at a local trail called Evans Creek, and even took it out on a couple overlanding and camping trips, and this thing has worked great. I am super happy with the performance of this lift kit on and off road. But today we're going to be adding something that I think is a must-have for any vehicle that you are going to take off-road, and that is the ability to self-recover. So today, my Jeep is getting a winch bumper and a winch. Well, check it out, everyone. This is my front winch mount bumper from IRO Off-Road. Now, I went with this particular bumper because, well, one, I just like IRO Off-Road's products. They have a great reputation, and everything that I've ever used from them has always been built with really high quality. Now, besides that, this thing is built really beefy with some thick 1/4-inch material. It has built-in super thick shackle recovery points built right into the bumper. The mounting tabs extend way down the uniframe channel with multiple bolting locations, so I know this thing is going to be nice and sturdy while winching. Now, this thing is also pretty cool because it's essentially customizable. They have a number of accessories that you can add on to this winch mounting system, including a lower radiator skid, which I did purchase and I will be including with this. But they also have these wings that you can purchase with this bumper if you wanted to run it as a complete full-on metal off-road bumper. Now, for me, I'm going to be mounting this thing essentially like a hidden winch mount because my factory bumper cover should go over to the top of this, allowing me to keep the factory WJ lines that I like so much. So we got to get this front bumper cover off so I can get to installing this thing. We better get to work. Well, now that the front bumper cover and the headlight bezel is removed, it now exposes our core support. So the next step here is actually going to be to cut off and remove the center section of this core support because our new bumper will slide into the frame horns here and actually replace that whole structure. So you do need to unbolt the 2 bolts here that hold on the, like the hood latch mechanism there. And then we're just going to cut it up right flush to the frame rail there, the uniframe rail. So I would probably use a cutoff wheel for pretty much anything like this, but I don't think I can get back behind it with the radiator in the way. So I think the best tool for this is a Sawzall with a really long blade, and we're just going to do our best to just get the blade in between the radiator and the frame horn and cut it there without hitting the radiator, of course. So we got to get in between here and cut it off and remove this whole center section. Let's get started. With the cross member now all cut away, I just came back in with an angle grinder and cleaned everything up and then just gave it a shot of paint so that we wouldn't have any rust. But we really only have one other thing to do before we can go ahead and get this bumper installed, and that is these bolts down in here that actually hold the sway bar mount on. I do need to remove those bolts and then push the sway bar down so I can slide my bumper up. And then I should just be, like with a floor jack, be able to lift the bumper into place and start bolting this thing into place. So this thing is coming together pretty quickly. Alright, well check it out. We got this bumper all bolted up here. The last couple bolts that I had to do, or the last step I had to do, was drill through the holes right here into the uniframe channel. And then there's a provided plate that goes through here, through the uniframe channel, and bolts in. So with these two bolts going through here, there is 4 bolts going up through the bottom of the bumper through the uniframe channel, plus the 2 bolts on the sway bar bracket. That's 8 bolts per side. So 16 bolts total holding in this bumper. I think this thing is going to be a great recovery point. So before we go ahead and install the winch, I'm going to add this. This is the optional radiator skid plate that you can buy with this bumper, and it is designed to bolt up with this bumper. Really the only thing that we need to do is we are going to have to get rid of, I guess this is sort of the skid plate for the factory, or the factory skid plate for the radiator, I guess. But we're going to have to cut this thing off here flush with the uniframe channel, and then we should be able to fit up this skid plate and get it bolted on. Now with the bumper and the radiator skid plate installed, it is now time to move on to getting our winch mounted. And the winch that we are going to be using is this 12K Badlands Apex winch from Harbor Freight. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know that we are fans of this winch on this channel. These things have just proven to be powerful and reliable. Kelly has absolutely used and abused his, and it's always performed great. Not only that, I think this winch is a good choice for a mount like this because it has a wireless controller, and I can remote mount the control box somewhere underneath the hood, giving this thing a lower profile, so hopefully minimizing the amount that I'm gonna have to trim out of the grill. But speaking of that, we do have our factory bumper or headlight bezel installed here, and we're gonna have to cut a little bit in order to fit this winch, so let's check that out. So the factory headlight bezel does hang over the winch mount quite a bit here because this sits so far back. So according to the instructions, it looks like we need to trim off some of these like cross supports here, and then the very bottom of this bezel. So as you can see, I think we need to cut roughly right here, and then these cross pieces out. Now this thing's still going to have plenty of strength because of the way that it's mounted and bolted, but what this is going to do is give me room to be able to get that winch back in there. So I think the best game plan for this one is I'm just going to use a cutoff wheel on my angle grinder and just get nice and close and cut these off. If I have to kind of trim it up with the grinder just to make everything look neat, I can. It is plastic, so it'll make a little bit of mess with the cutoff wheel, but I think that's the best tool for the job. Well, check it out. We got the winch sat in place in the bumper now, and if you saw that, I had a little bit of trouble. This thing fits, but it fits tight. In fact, I ended up having to grind a little bit off of the housing here on the winch in order to get this thing to fit in like I wanted to, which is not ideal, but I didn't want to take the this nice coating off of this actual bumper cover. So it shouldn't affect the winch, but you know, these Badlands winches are awesome, but they are a big bodied winch, and it fits in here. The bolts all align and everything, but it's a tight fit. So the other thing I'm gonna have to figure out, you will need to remote mount the winch for this setup, because unless you want to actually cut out the grill, which I don't. So the other thing I'm going to have to figure out is where to remote mount this. And again, this is a big unit with the Badlands winch. It's a big unit, so it's going to be tough to find a spot underneath this hood. Now I think I might have a solution for that, but I want to finish the install. I want to get the bumper cover on this thing to see how everything's going to fit and line up, and then I'll get the winch all hooked up. So the factory bumper cover is supposed to slide over this, but there's some trimming we need to do. I believe with like this lower radiator grill part does need to be trimmed a bit, and where the fair lead's going to be is where the license plate is. So I think we might have to do some trimming there, but I want to get this thing set up and trimmed and fit on the Jeep, so we can see what this is going to look like. always makes the weather has changed dramatically. It is freezing cold out here, but more importantly, what a difference this Iron Rock off-road front winch bumper has done for the front end of this Jeep. You know, I'm pretty impressed with the way that this front bumper cover sits over the top of this Iron Rock off-road front winch bumper. And I did have to put the thing on and off a few times, trimming just a little bit here and there and trimming just a little bit here and there to make this thing work. And the biggest thing that I was worried about was actually this grill underneath here for the radiator. You know, if I cut out these supports, is it gonna just kind of wobble around? But it does push up against, you know, the bottom of that bumper pretty good, and so they don't just shake around while you're driving. But other than that, this thing looks really good and fits over the top of this bumper really nicely. But the most important part is that winch. I now have a firm mounting location for a winch. So speaking of this winch, let's check this out on how I ended up hooking this thing up. So check it out. This is what I ended up doing for the winch control box. Now, of course, that control box was not going to fit underneath here and still allow me to step my grill on here. So I kind of thought about it for a while and looked all over the place and just really couldn't find a good spot to put that pretty big control box underneath the hood of this Grand Cherokee. In fact, I would love to know where people actually end up mounting their control boxes when they hook them up remotely. If you have a nice secret spot, I would love for you to throw a comment down below. I did think about putting it down in here where the factory airbox is, but I want to get rid of this. This thing's horrible, and so I actually do have a factory airbox and I want to replace it. So what I did was I ended up taking apart the control box for the winch, and I just took out the solenoid, I took out the switches and all the sensors, and I just made this little plate here. It's nothing too crazy. Drilled out some holes, mounted the switch here. This is, of course, is the plug for the winch controller, and I think this is a control box and the sensor for like the wireless part of the winch. And then I just fed the wires down, and you can't really see it here, but I just ran the solenoid up underneath here and managed to find a spot where I could fasten it up against here behind the grill, and then ran the wires up from the winch. And so this is not something I'm married to. I will possibly find a better location for this, but it's convenient. It's all right there. This is still going to stay out of the weather, and so I think it's going to be quick and easy to access when I need to use my winch. Okay, now clearly that was not really a situation that I probably needed a winch, but I just wanted to get this thing and try it out and test it out, and it was uphill, putting a little bit of strain and putting a little weight on the vehicle from down inside that little retaining pond. And I mean, I have to say it worked great. There was absolutely no flex. This thing just pulled it right up, and I really am impressed with this bumper, and I think the design and all of those different bolting locations, spreading out the load along the uniframe channel, I really do think this is a well-designed, good bumper that's going to give me exactly what I wanted, which is that ability to self-recover, which is one of the most important things you can possibly have for any vehicle that you go off-road on. So if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you are not already. If you like the bumper, go check out ironrockoffroad.com and make sure you leave your comments down below. And until next time, we will see you on the trail.